A relationship with the right referral partner could be a game changer for any B2B company. So what if you could reverse engineer these relationships at a moment's notice? Start a podcast, invite potential referral partners to be guests on your show, and grow your referral network faster than ever. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to the B2B Growth Show, a podcast dedicated to helping B2B executives achieve explosive growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. I'm James Carberry.
And I'm Jonathan Green.
Let's get into the show. Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. We are here today with Anudit Vikram. He is the Senior Vice President of Audience Solutions at Dun & Bradstreet. Anudit, how are you doing today?
Very good. And how are you?
I am wonderful. So, Anudit, we're going to be talking about tracking the B2B buyer's journey today. But before we get into that, I'd love for you to explain to the few people listening that aren't already aware of Dun & Bradstreet, explain to us a little bit about, what is Dun & Bradstreet and how you guys serve customers.
Absolutely. So Dun & Bradstreet is a commercial data company. We track and have information on about 290 million businesses across the world. We pride ourselves on having the world's largest commercial data set. And when that information that we have, we use it for a bunch of different use cases. The sales and marketing one, what we're going to talk about, is quite obviously a very, very straightforward one to use it for. But more importantly than that, we also use the data to help companies manage trade credit, manage their supply chain, as well as use analytics for understanding how you should interact with your customers or your partners and so on.
All right. So as we dive into the topic today in talking about tracking the buyer's journey in a B2B context, is when we were talking through this offline, tracking customer in B2B is obviously much different than B2C because you have to track the customer in context of the account, which can become really, really tough. Can you expand on this idea for us?
Yeah, absolutely. This is actually a topic very close to my heart and something that I think is becoming very prevalent, as B2B marketers are becoming more and more digitally savvy, and as businesses that are trying to work with other businesses have more of their journey or engage in more of their journey in the digital channels. So just to take a step back, we spoke a little bit about D&B and the fact that we have data on companies. I just want to elaborate that for just a few seconds. One of the things that we have done with this data is we have translated that data into online identifiers. So the companies that we have information on, and if we were to just focus ourselves on the U.S. for the time being, there are about 24.4 million businesses, active businesses in the U.S. today, and there are about 16 million of them that we can find online, either through a cookie or a device ID or an IP or so. And of the about 80-odd million professionals in the U.S. today, there are about 46 million of them that we can find online, again, through cookie or a device ID. And this becomes very important when you start thinking about B2B marketers trying to speak to their customers, who are other businesses for the most part. When in the B2C space, when you are trying to engage with somebody, and let's take an example of Nike selling a shoe. If Nike were to try and sell me a shoe, they just want to make sure that they follow me as I go through my journey in engaging with Nike, whether it is me on a website looking at a Nike product, or the Nike website itself, looking at something, or maybe some other sports website where I make obvious that I'm interested in running or certain other sports activities that Nike has shoes for. Now, it's not that it is very simple, but it is relatively simple for Nike because all they need to care about is knowing me and what I am doing at any given point in time. Now, when you switch that over to the business context, and let's think about IBM trying to sell cloud services to another company. Now, the first thing that happens is that there is not one person at that company that actually buys cloud services. The decision to buy a cloud service is normally made by committee, and then there are a bunch of different people within different groups within a company that get involved in that decision-making process. And all of these people are engaging with IBM at different points in time. Sometimes it could be the IT decision maker. Sometimes it could just be a developer. Sometimes it could be somebody in the procurement department, somebody in the legal department, somebody in finance, and so on and so forth. Now, when you think about people expressing themselves in digital channels, each of these people that are engaging with IBM will be presenting themselves to IBM as an identity, as a unique individual with an identity of their own. So when IBM is looking at, company XYZ, engaging with them, they don't really see company XYZ. What they see is they see 17, 18 different people engaging with them. And what becomes very important for IBM is to figure out, are these 17 people or, the hundreds of people that are coming to the IBM website, do they represent one company? Are they representing a bunch of different companies? Or are each of them actually individual people representing individual companies? And that becomes very important to understand, because knowing how many people and what persona or what profile of the people from a given company is engaging with you can help that B2B marketer make a decision about where that customer of theirs is in their sales channel, or what is the level of engagement with that customer is showing to them. Now, when you extract that out and when you look at it, from a higher level view, the thing that becomes really important is being able to tie these different individuals with unique cookies, unique device IDs, and so on to a given business that is actually engaging with the brand or the brand marketer. And this concept becomes a little bit more complicated because companies don't have digital identifiers, people within companies have. And so what we at Dun & Bradstreet do is when we bring this offline data set, the 24.4 million businesses that I spoke about and the 80 million professionals within businesses, when we bring that online, we are always tying that digital identifier back to an actual company, and we help B2B marketers basically tie together that customer journey, if you will, to make it into a higher level account journey so that the marketer can see how a given account is engaging with them and not necessarily just people within given accounts.
Okay. So when all of that information is tied together, that makes sense as you explain that. The next piece that I want to touch on is, with there being so many devices that generate data now, you've got computers, tablets, phones, wearables, your Apple Watch, all that stuff. So it just creates an enormous amount of data, both transactional, social, which just seems to add even more complexity to what you were just explaining. How do B2B marketers adjust to that dynamic?
Right. So again, the world has been talking about the concept of cross-device matching and cross-device identity for some time, and I think the same rules apply in this case in the B2B space as well. What we see is people generating digital signals in multiple different channels on multiple different devices. And from the Dun & Bradstreet perspective, what we focus on is that as we look at all these digital signals, whether it is a signal generated from an IoT device or a signal generated as an IP address from a laptop or a server, or it is a device ID through a tablet or a smartphone and so on, how can we tie that back to some kind of a static, persistent, consistent identifier that can actually span across these different devices and across these different channels? And to us, the concept of the DUNS is that static identifier, which accomplishes two things. One, it gives us this ability to have an identity that is tied back to a given company or a given business, and at the same time is tied down to a given device or a given channel or a given platform. And therefore, because of having this persistent static identifier that lives both in these devices and channels as well as in the offline space as the identity associated with a company in a CRM system or an ERP system or an accounting system, we enable our customers, our partners, to essentially be able to tie together these different individual identities into a given account identity or a business identity, and then make decisions at that business level, understanding that people across different devices, across different channels, are actually just representation of a given business at a given location that is interacting with you.
Okay. So that DUNS number, obviously, that's specific to Dun & Bradstreet. It's kind of the standard for commercial identity verification, and that number being tied to, you mentioned it being, that static number. How is that adjusted as folks are, I've even noticed it in the 2 years of hosting this show that a lot of our guests have, moved jobs or they've moved around. How does the data being collected that you guys are storing for all these different companies, I guess, how often is that updated to keep up with, folks just progressing through their career and either changing jobs within an organization or completely changing organizations altogether?
Absolutely. That's a great question. And actually, there are two parts to that answer. And so this might be a little drawn out, but let me walk through it. The DUNS number is a consistent, a static identifier that is generated for a company when a company is created or when when two companies want to do business with each other, they look at the existence of a DUNS. Just to talk a little bit about what the DUNS is, it is essentially a numerical digit that signifies a company on three different levels. It is a company as a global entity, so there will be a DUNS which we call as the global ultimate. So if we was just to take IBM as an example again, Armonk, the IBM office in Armonk, New York, would basically have the global ultimate DUNS number for IBM. Now, there might be an IBM office in New York or in Dallas or Austin or San Francisco and so on, and there will be what we would call as a site DUNS location. So there is a DUNS number associated with IBM in San Francisco, and there would be a site DUNS. And then, for example, there would be an IBM office, let's say in London, which happens to be the head office of that local geography. And so there would be what we call as a local ultimate or a domestic ultimate for the office in London. And so the DUNS actually is a location-based identifier that signifies a company. And every location of a company has a DUNS associated with it. People, on the other hand, don't necessarily have a DUNS directly associated with them, but because of our contact database and because we understand of people working at companies, and sure, we understand when people move from one company to the other and so on, we essentially associate people with a company, and the company or that location of that company is then associated with the DUNS, right? So what happens is that the DUNS doesn't change over time. Once the DUNS is generated, it changes only, or a new DUNS gets created when a new location of a company comes up, right? Okay. But the people association to the DUNS changes depending on how they move from a company to the other or how they move from one location of a company to another location. And that data, the online identifier that we have, whether it's a cookie or a device ID, and its association to the DUNS, we change that on a monthly basis, or I don't want to say change, we refresh that on a monthly basis to make sure that we are keeping that live, while the association of the company to its actual DUNS number obviously lives on forever. And just to make it real for people, the DUNS number is not just an esoteric number that some company might or might not create. Most financial organizations, if you want to take a loan from somebody or if you want to do a business with a financial organization, they would expect you to have a DUNS. As a matter of fact, if you want to be an independent software vendor or a developer for Apple and you want to have an app that you create that is made available on the App Store, you have to have a DUNS because Apple uses that to ensure that you are a legitimate entity that's being paid out to. If you want to work with the government of the United States, you have to have a DUNS. So most companies, just by the nature of being real active companies that are engaging with other companies, require a DUNS, which we at DNB generate and make available to them for them to use.
All right. So to kind of wrap this up in a nice little bow tie, Anudit, I want to talk about three specific things that we talked about offline. Essentially, when the folks listening to this, when the B2B marketer are listening to this, when they're accurately managing and tracking identities, it's going to allow them to do three things. The first one is to have better attribution. The second one is to avoid spending money on fraudulent clicks. And the third one is to understand who's visiting their properties so that they can target better. Can you talk to us a little bit more about each of those three things?
Absolutely. And I'll just go in a different, in the bottom-up order, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So think about a B2B marketer. Well, the one thing that the B2B marketer wants to do is ensure that they are engaging with their prospects and their customers in the most efficient manner. And today we have research telling us that for a company to make a buying decision, they actually cover about 67% of their buying journey in a digital channel without actually engaging face-to-face or in person with the company that they want to buy from. Obviously, this means that the B2B marketer needs to be smart about understanding who is engaging with them in that digital channel and who is coming to their website and so on. Like I said, what we have done at DNB is created these generated this set of online identities associated with businesses, and all of these online identities are actually tied back to a business through the DUNS. And so for the B2B marketer, when somebody comes to their website, we can help them understand who is that company that is actually visiting their site, and more importantly, who is the persona within that company that is actually engaging with them. And that allows them to make a decision, a website personalization decision to show a certain specific type of content to that person engaging, or it can have them make a targeting decision which says, what are the kind of people that I want to drive to my website, and therefore let me use a set of digital signals, which we can help provide to help target an advertising campaign to drive traffic to the site. Right? That's the one thing that we help people do. The second thing that we help people do is when you have somebody who's coming to your site, either because of a targeted campaign that you showed them, or because of an organic reach that you actually generated, because of the ability of tracking back to the DUNS, and because of having these digital identifiers tied back to the offline identifier, we can help you run an attribution campaign or an attribution model, which lets you understand how are the different channels in which you are engaging with your prospects and your customers performing. Because we can tell you how the digital channel is performing for you, and how does that translate into an actual record in your CRM system or your ERP system and so on. And we can help you match those two together to then create those the attribution statistic that you would want to create. And finally, as you engage with people in digital channels, I mean, today, fraud is a big thing in the digital space, more so because programmatic has increased the volume of data so much that bad actors are able to carry out fraudulent activities with increasing degree of ease. And I think the World Federation of Advertisers actually says that there's almost $50 billion in lost economic effect because of fraud. And the one way to handle fraud is to make sure that the people that you're talking to are actually real people, or they are real businesses and so on. And because of the data that we have and the ability to actually enable you to target exactly the right people and ensure that the websites that you are presenting your ads on are real and right websites, we can help our customers and our partners also take care of the effect of fraud, or make sure that they are not as badly impacted through fraud as they otherwise would have been.
I love it. This has been fantastic, Anudit. If there's somebody listening to this episode that want to stay connected with you, or they want to learn more about Dun & Bradstreet, what's the best way for them to go about doing that?
Well, audience@dnb.com is the right email address to reach out to. I have a team, and the team monitors that email. It is absolutely the right way to reach to us. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You find me on LinkedIn, as well as, there are people on the DNB team that you can reach out to. But I think audience@dnb.com is the perfect way to reach us.
Awesome, Anudit. Well, thank you again so much for your time today. This has been fantastic, and I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
There are lots of ways to build a community, and we've chosen to build the B2B growth community through this podcast. But because of the way podcasts work, it's really hard to engage with our listeners. And without engagement, it's tough to build a great community. So here's what we've decided to do. We're organizing small dinners across the country with our listeners and guests. No sales pitches, no agenda, Just great conversations with like-minded people. We'll talk business, we'll talk family, we'll talk goals and dreams. We'll build friendships. So if you'd like to be a part of a B2B growth dinner in a city near you, go to b2bgrowthdinners.com. That's b2bgrowthdinners.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.